This is going to be testing and processing CBD, what producers and consumers need to know. Our speakers are Carl Christianson of Northeast Processing and Keith Griswold. And then Fabio Roni of Icon Processors. So they'll have a discussion a little bit, and then we'll open up to question and answers after.
Hello, welcome to Testing and Processing. I'm Carl Christianson from Northeast Processing. We're down in Brattleboro, Vermont. And what we want to do is pretty quickly open the floor so that we can make this a discussion and really be available to answer all the questions that you may have. But briefly, we're approaching harvest season, and that's a very exciting time of year. So I think that it's pretty clear that we need to address the time frame where testing is going to be important for those of you growing crops, when in the processing cycle you would need to have crops tested, what you might be looking for during that time, what your options are for processing, the different methodologies involved, some of the positives and negatives, as well as then what you can expect for end products. We are happy to talk about all of that, post-processing, any of the particular types of products that you can expect in your endpoint, and how we might work to serve the needs of the Vermont hemp community. So without further ado, let's open it up for questions and just dive into this. Well, it's nice being here today.
So any questions on this? Let's start over here.
Hi. My question is, can you expect, on average, by weight, return on your processing? If you say by the pound, what would you get back? I know it varies, but on average, say you process a pound, what percentage can you expect to get back?
Percents can vary based on what's your CBD content to start with, Normally, when we do our calculations, we like to base it on a simple math, let's say to 1,000 pounds, but it also varies on your CBD. We can normally extract about 90 to 95% of your total CBD. So if you have 10%, we will be able to pull about 9 to 9.5% of this. Oh, sorry. Based on that, then that's your crude. That's your initial start. And then if you want distillate and things of that nature, obviously you lose sometimes 25 to 50%, varying on how you winterize and filter your products. Then every time you go to another stage of distillate, you're always losing a little bit because your purities are increasing, but you're removing a lot more of these impurities. So when we start with a crude off a pound at 10%, would you like 10% CBD in a sense? You would normally start with about 40 grams, give or take. And then if you go to a distillate, you can lose anywhere from 10 to 50% of that. So based on that is where you're going to look at. So as a processors, we always like to see somebody with a high amount of CBD, because the same amount of time that we're going to process something with 10%, we can also process something at 15%. And for us, time is money in a sense,
And to piggyback on this, I mean, the differentiation in percentages really does play a huge role. And so that's where a lot of times, to set your expectations of what you might get back, that's why it's important to have rigorous analytical data that supports it, because you'll be able to predict a lot of these returns based on the efficiencies of the instrumentation. And companies like ours, we've gone through the process to the point where we can predict what will come out of the instrument, but again, that is determined by what goes in.
So do you buy product? Do you buy the product from growers?
Yeah, so Northeast Processing, we will purchase raw material straight from farmers. If that's the way they want to do, we want to be able to support Vermont farmers that want to be farmers and not necessarily product producers or someone who's generating a brand on their own. So that's certainly one of the things that we offer as a service for us, but we would also do processing for hire and return oil to people who are interested in that side of the business as well.
Yeah, as processors, we normally do where we can purchase, we can do splits. A lot of times people come in and don't want to have to pay, but we'll purchase, or we'll do a split in a sense like a 50-50 where you give us your products, we'll process it, you'll end up getting a return of 50% of the oil. We can either purchase it or then we can also do it for hire as well. And then there's also white labeling, post-processing. There's many different ways of doing it once you're a processor.
So what are you mostly looking for?
High quality CBD, low THC, pesticide free, things of that, trying to keep it as organic, highest quality possible.
Yeah, we're what you can bring to us, we're willing to work with you, and that's really we built our business in Brattleboro so that we could help serve the Vermont farmers since we noticed a backlog of material, and so we'll work with you.
So right now, it is okay. Yeah. So right now it's the $25 license for people who go in farming, and everything falls under that 25, right? That's the processing and whatnot. And right at the moment, there's not any other licensure or any real regulation. Is that right? But the agriculture's working on that piece, and it'll definitely come through with the Farm Bill.
Yes.
The reason why I'm asking is I come from New Hampshire.
Yeah.
And personally, I'm going to have a small extraction operation that will be portable for myself. So as for my $25 fee, I could feasibly become federally compliant very easily to the unawares of New Hampshire, right?
I like to quote my lawyer in moments like these where I say that there's a lot of gray area here.
Yeah,
and I'm
and gray, but gray is good.
But
in this
I am
business.
not the person to
Gray is good.
to provide any point of
But
view.
nothing.
on that.
I wasn't saying anything that you could say contrary to necessarily. Right?
Yeah, I mean, the way Vermont is set up right now, I mean, you're right that there's a lack of licensing regulation as it pertains to different aspects of the industry, and that's something that I know Carrie and the Department of Ag is working on right now, and I think it's important. Not that I'm saying that we need to overregulate anything, but I think it's important that we have strict understandings of what the capabilities are and how to have best practices in place and how to work honestly within the system and be able to still support this growing economic boom.
So I have a very basic question about dry versus fresh plant material. I'm assuming you guys only work with dry material, but you do work with fresh. That's okay. I'm glad I asked.
So, is there more?
Well, I just was wondering, if it was possible to give you guys fresh material, because that's a major barrier for people is properly drying it.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to talk more about it?
Yeah, I mean, we've extracted, as using ethanol, a lot of times people have gone to -60, -80 degrees Celsius. We've done it fresh, we've done it frozen, we've done it dried, we've done it at all various temperatures. For us, it's not an issue.
In terms of, just one thing to point out is that with wet material, and a lot of times testing plays an important role with wet versus dry material. A lot of times price points, so you need to be aware that wet material will weigh substantially more than dry material, and oftentimes the price point of purchase for hemp or things like this is dependent upon the weight and the percentage of CBD. If you have wet material, you might be talking about percentages that seem quite low, but they're low artificially because the water is still there. So as an overall percentage, they're low. So there's some nuance there. And then from the testing side of it,
to be specific about it, dry material we tend to target between 5 and 13%. That's our acceptance criteria for dried material. Wet plant could be anywhere from upwards of 60 to 80% moisture. So, and CBD is measured by weight. So you can see how the values would be lower in that sense.
For any processors, the ideal would be dried and cured.
So if I'm bringing my product to you, who's doing the testing? Is that you or is that me before I bring it to you?
well, we offer a testing lab at Northeast Processing, but of course, we encourage people to seek third-party testing in addition to our testing if they feel that what we're returning is not what they believe their material to be. But we will be serving as a testing facility for within the state as well. Yeah.
So could you walk us through the process a little bit and maybe sort of give a comparison with the dry and the wet so that we can sort of almost have a factory tour without, being there?
Do you want to do it?
In regards, you want to know how our process is done, in a sense, of how we make the oil? Okay. It normally we do ethanol extractions. We use 200 proof, food grade, grass rated, which is by FDA means generally regarded as safe. It normally goes into an ethanol wash. Then I have a 7-stage filtration system. The downfall sometimes with ethanol is that people, it's a good extractor, but it does pull some unwanted products from the plant, like some chlorophyll and things of that nature. We literally have a 7-stage filtration process where we remove a lot of these unwanted impurities. Then we distill that in a rotary vapor or some sort of distillation equipment where we recuperate all of our ethanol. Then from there, we take our crude product and we either do a fractional distillation to obtain your distillate. And that's how we removed a lot of the THCs as well.
One thing I'll add is, to give a timeline to as well to the process. The first thing that we would recommend is doing a pre-harvest test on your material about 20 days prior to harvest. Different states have said different time frames. Some say 10, some say 20. We think maybe the earlier the better, just in case you're starting to see your THC levels climb up. You want to ensure that you're aware. We believe that the most important numbers are the ratio between THC and CBD, because you're going to see that as the plants mature and go farther along, that those two numbers can climb together. So we think that early testing point is good because it might inform you of a need to possibly harvest at an earlier point in time so as to prevent your material from going past legality. And when the material is delivered in our facility, the first thing that we will do is do a test of the facility or at the facility at that point in time as it enters, because that's where we'll determine the final percentage point of CBDs to determine the final price point for the purchase with the farmers. And then at that point, what Fabio said, you go through the different processes, depending on whether it's ethanol or CO2, and then you have different levels of post-processing, whether you want a whole plant extract or a distillate or a THC-free isolate. There's a number of things that can happen there. The initial processing and pulling out of the oils from the plant is something that doesn't take a tremendous amount of time. That can be done within the context of one working day. But then the post-processing and some of those things, and if you're looking for formulations for consumer-based products and us to facilitate some of those things, that's where timing can take several days or a week. So it's important to have some of those expectations in place if you're coming to a processor. The easiest thing you can ask us to do, I think, is to do whole plant extract, because it does, in terms of after the initial extraction, the amount of work is the least.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, if you've got questions, so maybe while they're answering, just try to catch my eye and I'll get over there. Here's the next one.
I'm following up on her question. You're located in Brattleboro.
We are, yes.
Is that where your processing facility is?
Yes.
So next September, I have 800 pounds in my barn. It's dry, and I've had it pre-tested. So I say, today I'm going to drive down to Brattleboro with my 800 pounds, and I've got a pickup truck. I've got 10 pickup trucks, and I'm coming down with my 800 pounds. And you say, what in the hell are you doing here? We need this kind of advance notice before before we can schedule the processing. And oh, by the way, do you know how much this is going to cost you? And are you paying us now, later, or are you going to split? It's going to be revenue sharing, profit sharing?
So we set up everything through contractual agreements. We have MOUs, memorandums of understanding, between us and our farming partners. Ideally, those are set up ahead of harvest, so in the summer and in these months now. And what we do is we lay out very clearly the expectations between both the farmer and our side of the agreement. We then work, to establish more of a schedule. We will offer to pick up material from our farming partners. So, you don't have to worry too much about getting a convoy necessarily headed down to our facility. If it doesn't come to that, and not everyone is able to plan months in advance, we're certainly going to be able to accommodate people. But if you show up just unannounced, it may not be the most efficient intake of your material.
Okay.
So we are commencing our operations this year with about 400 pounds a day capacity, and that's just based off of a one shift that we're working right now, and then we have our plans for expansion. Our internal plans will be able to grow beyond that, I'll say, for November and December.
You said whole plant before.
Yeah.
You can just take the whole plant into your place.
So I find that the biggest issue I have in this industry is nomenclature. So full spectrum, whole plant, distillate, isolate, CBD or THC-free isolate. There's a lot of terms that get thrown around, and I think that maybe as a community, as a whole, maybe we can start to generate a glossary about what we mean when we say certain things. I'm actually working on that right now, so look for that. I'll try to put it on social media and make it catch fire. Who knows? I don't know. I'm not really savvy about that type of thing, but I do really like definitions, so.
Will you receive homegrown to test various, whether it has mycotoxins or the various ratios? If some, just Joe Schmo wanted to get their homegrown tested, does it have to be hemp? Can it be cannabis?
So
now that it's legal,
should I reference my lawyer again? So right now we are not, we're not permitted, and we're not working with marijuana. So we very much are a hemp-focused company. Yeah, well, I agree, but it's hard when you're a hemp company to differentiate when you say cannabis too. So, yeah, we should work on that collectively. Absolutely. But I don't want to confuse anyone when I say that we're cannabis testing. I want to be very clear about what our capabilities are right now. I mean, we're going to work very closely with the government to ensure that we are federally and state compliant, and hopefully we'll be able to test across the spectrum at some point.
Is my hemp, while you're processing it, insured in case of a oh God moment?
Yes, we are fully insured.
So my crop is insured for a specified price?
Your crop is insured once it's in our possession within our facility. We have insurance for whatever is within our building. Now, it's a good question about how we value the crop and the insurance. To be honest, I don't have a great answer for you about what the valuation would be, because I assume that it would be more of a price for a purchase less than maybe the market value could yield. So that's a good question, something I will look into with my insurance agents.
And I was wondering, is there any wiggle room for if something comes in hot, if it's just a little bit over, like is what does that look like?
Are you a federal marshal? Or? No, there's no wiggle room.
Yep. Hi, Kerry Jaguar, Agency of Agriculture. If John Rogers is in the room, he was a senator last year. Act 143 or H66 was passed. Shane is in the room, the dispensary for CBD. If you come in above 0.3%, there's two things you can do. One is destroy the crop. The other is work with a dispensary or someone licensed to handle THC or marijuana, and you can negotiate with the dispensary to have the same services. They're at smaller scale, but not 400 pounds a day, but similar services to what Carl's talking about offering.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's an important thing, right? So if you are testing hot, and we will have to, work with you to make sure that the dispensaries are an outlet for you. The one thing that's a nice part of that legislation, though, is that the state did basically say that you're not going to be arrested, at least, and that was a positive step in the right direction, I think. So.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, geez, I hope I'm not getting arrested, but we're not going to take the material in until it's validated. So we won't take control of any material until we're sure that it's federally compliant for our safety and purposes.
My question is a two-part question, I guess. The first part is, you're running 400 pounds in one run, I presume, and in one shift, like you say. And is that in like one vessel, or I don't quite understand the technology? And then my second part of that question being, how much CBD or how much cannabinoid is left in that product after it's been run? How much are you able to actually extract out of large runs like that?
Well, we are not we're not running a 400-pound run, so it's multiple runs that are of smaller biomass. And in terms of our yield, I mean, we are also extracting over 95%, and this is something that we're going to continue to work very closely with advanced analytics in order to tease out all these things and try to push our boundaries as efficiently as we can get. I'd love to get up to 99. I mean, some of the things are quoted. We're starting right now with an ethanol system and have a CO2 system on the horizon for our expansion plans into this year's harvest. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty, would you say it's pretty common across the board to be expecting these 95% efficiency rates?
A lot of times, if you're doing 400 pounds, some of these machines would literally have to be the size of half of this room. So we even do about that per day, but it's mainly based on 50-pound batches, you could say.
Yes.
We do not currently have a facility at the moment. We are looking to obtain a warehouse industrial building. We're going to be meeting with zoning officials and engineers to make sure that once we have a proper facility that is in the right zones and is coded, in the right place. Once that's done for us, we could be operational within 2 weeks. We've set up clean rooms, we've set up laboratories and processing facilities for the last 5 years. It's not something new to me. Literally been processing for over a half a decade at the moment. Literally within 2 days, we're operational. So based on that, it's just trying to find, for me, a location at this moment. I'm trying to stay in the center of Vermont.
So plants growing, indoor. We have a question back here.
Thanks. I was wondering if after this next Vermont legislative session we have tax and regs figured out for recreational, are you going to hold to your federal and state compliance rules that you're currently operating by, or if the state goes full legal, there's going to be demand for processing and testing on recreational? Are you considering opening up to that?
So we have prioritized one thing in setting up our business, and that's flexibility to this market, because I don't know, I wish I could see 3 months in the future, let alone multiple years in the future. So for us, we're really committed to staying in the hemp realm. But if all of you, our farmers, decide that you're not committed to staying in the hemp realm, that's going to be a really difficult business for us to run in the state of Vermont. So what I'll say is we very much have the expectation that it's not going to happen that way. And even if tax and regulate comes, we believe that probably our analytical lab, we anticipate that we would want to expand that into that realm for sure. But in terms of processing, all I can say right now is that we're committed long-term to hemp.
Just wondering how you see the supply versus demand, and is there any difference between stuff growing out in the field or inside?
Currently, I see there's more of a demand than a supply. America, I believe right now is we're consuming not even 5% or something like that of the CBD. And this is something new for everybody, where you see parts of Europe, they're consuming a lot. They've been consuming CBD a lot longer than we have. In regards to indoor, outdoor grows, I guess it varies on the farmer. I mean, I'm not the farmer. That's not my forte. In the cannabis industry, they like that because they can literally replicate indoor grows, where outdoor you're limited to your outdoor environments. They're, in a sense, even with pesticides and things like that. But now if you're trying to grow 1,000 acres, I don't know how you're going to be able to fit something like that in barns or greenhouses.
In terms of the
quality. I've always seen normally in the cannabis industry and a little bit of in the hemp, indoors always had a little bit better quality. If you even look at the national average for cannabis, I mean, you can get it at outdoors like $800 a pound, where indoors is, I believe it, last time I checked, it was at $1,300. It's more of a controlled environment. Like I said, I'm not the expert with that, but when you have your lighting and your humidity and your climate controls, you should be able to produce a better product.
In terms of the market, I think this is one of, I've done a lot of market research, and man, it's a little frustrating because, and this is what I'm hoping, my great hope for this year, and being able to kind of work with a lot of Vermont farmers, is that we can start to shape the market in a more based in reality, I think. So right now, I think the market depends on who you ask. If you ask people out there who are selling CBD, they'll say there's, that well, you have a lot of people who are saying there's a tremendous amount of CBD. Then you have a lot of people who want to buy that say, well, where is it? Because I can't find it to purchase it. So on the national stage right now, it's a bit strange. I don't see any semblance of economics playing a role in supply and demand right now. I think what you're finding is a lot of people rushing into an industry, hoping to earn a quick dollar, and hoping to carve out their little slice of profit margin. And so it's my hope that as we start to produce Vermont hemp into different oils, that we can have a legitimized supply chain where we can start to actually get a better sense of what the pricing should be, both for the farmer and for people purchasing it on the consumer end, because there's a lot of people who are saying it's too expensive to purchase, and then you have people driving the prices down, brokers on a national stage, and yet it's still hard to get material. So I don't really understand how all that is working right now, and so I think it's going to be really beneficial to all of us to have a market that continues to mature, and then hopefully as we can embrace Vermont's agrarian history and shape the Vermont hemp in the same way that the craft brewing industry and the cheese industry and maple syrup is in this state, so that we can continue to be at the top of that pyramid and focused on high quality and brands that will have a strong showing even on a national stage.
Hi. I have a question about testing concentrates. I'm starting a cannabis collective, and we're going to be kind of modeled after Rick Simpson, and we're trying to make things affordable or free to vets and low-income people, and one of my concerns with the concentrates is getting them tested, and especially if folks with compromised immune systems. Do you recommend getting the plant material tested and then the concentrate tested at the end for particularly mycotoxins and things of that nature? How to do it affordably for someone not making money for giving stuff away?
Right. Well, the cost of analytical testing is always a hot topic, of course. If we're talking about final product quality, I'd recommend that that's primarily what needs to be tested, for CBD levels. If we're looking at something like pesticide contamination or mycotoxins, testing whole plant is preferred. Because obviously you wouldn't want to be putting these contaminants through your processing facility. As far as keeping it affordable goes, I'll tell you the easiest way to say is that testing oils, final products, is much cheaper than whole plants and much easier to do. So I would certainly say, from your perspective, making sure that the quality of the final product is upheld.
Hi, how you doing? You mentioned before about the farmer coming to the processing center and either giving you the whole plan. I guess you guys just buy the product as is, or you guys will give back the oil to the farmers. What is the percentage are you guys seeing? Is it split half and half, or are the farmers just emptying their stock onto you guys mostly?
Splits I've seen anywhere from 70-30, where the processor takes 70%. And it's how you base it with the processor. We do a 50-50 split.
But in terms of the percentage between farmers that we see looking to sell versus farmers that are looking to do processing for hire or oil splits, we're seeing very much predominantly farmers who are looking to sell us biomass.
We get time for, we're going to shoot to get through, I guess, around 5, so we've got time for a couple more questions.
I just want to make sure I have the process right. Raw, winterization, and a fractal process, right?
So that winterization is more of a necessary step in supercritical carbon dioxide extraction.
Right, but you do a fractal process after that, right?
I'm sorry.
A fractal processing?
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah. So hypothetically, you can dial out THC at that level, correct?
Yeah.
So everybody's product could be spec when it's done, correct?
Well, that's correct, but right
Thank you.
now.
You don't have to say more. Got it.
But we couldn't bring it in our door if it were testing hot. So.
I was just curious, what are you looking at for rates for buying material, and then also your per pound costs for extraction?
I've come to realize in life, I don't like to count my chickens before they hatch. It's one of those, if it all varies, what's your percent of CBD, THC? Is it dry? Is it wet? Are we taking it from your farm, or am I having to have to dry it if I need to? There's a lot of variables when it comes down to this. The best thing I can say is I've always used it there. I don't test. I don't do analytics. I say at that point when I come out there is you can have your own testing done. I like to take 2 samples, base an average, nice average upon that. Once we get the lab results there, then it's based on a lot of times what people will do is based on X amount of dollars per percent.
Excuse me. So first I'll preface by saying we don't know what's going to happen tonight. And that's just one example, right? So for all of you Northeast Kingdom farmers, I very much hope that there's not a hard frost tonight. But things like this, and in any agricultural market, you have fluctuations that can happen very quickly. So if there's a huge crop loss, then prices go up. And if there's an abundance of product, then prices can go down. I'll be very frank and honest with you about our pricing right now. We're seeing prices that make sense between $6 to $8 per percentage point of CBD per pound. In terms of processing for hire, we're seeing that a reasonable starting point for that is about $150 per pound.
We have time for one more question. Back to here.
Thanks. So in the industry, and particularly with your businesses, is the state helping, or is the state getting in the way? Are there a lot of regulations that are slowing you down? And if so, what are some of those barriers that you're seeing to the industry and your businesses taking off?
Well, I think I'm sorry to commandeer, but I know that I've done a lot with the government side of things more so. But I think that, or thought a lot about this. I think Vermont's in a unique position in the fact that their hemp legislation from the state came about in 2013, a year ahead of the 2014 Farm Bill. So it's been a really great state for embracing innovation within the hemp industry and allowing people to kind of get to the point where we're at now, with a lot of farmers paying $25 to really go to town and figure things out. Product producers coming in, people like us, Northeast Processing, coming in to really try to serve that community. So to this point, I think kind of the less regulation has been good for getting people up and off the ground. However, moving forward and in anticipation of future regulation, the thing that we're interested in is just ensuring that we continue to differentiate between hemp and THC containing cannabis, if that's is that better? Because we think, and I mentioned this with Carrie's response earlier, is that it's going to be important that we have clear definitions and clear roles, and there may be licensing and things, and all of this is going to help the industry because we're going to have clear structure in place. All we're hopeful is that we just don't regulate it exactly as if it were THC containing, because that could do a disservice to a lot of farmers in the state, and the freedom to simply make this part of a of an integrated farm that has a number of different crops and things like that. And that will become nearly impossible, I think, if it's regulated as marijuana.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank the panel.